Hello and welcome to this CodeBuddies.org live code hangout. Today we'll continue working on the Wagtail social networks website. I've renamed the project repo. I need to change that in the README as well. There was already a project called Wagtail Social. I think it was relating to social media links, so I don't want to collide with that name. And perhaps I'll see if there's already a Wagtail social network project that's been published, but in any case, we're going to continue working on these features. In the last code session, I left off working on chapter membership, allowing people to join chapters. And I was having some troubles in this pull request. I think I indicated that the chooser, this Wagtail instance select widget, looks really nice, but it has I think significant shortcoming that you can't choose an entity without first editing it. I think the primary use case or the main user flow here would be to select the entity, and that editing the entity, the related entity, would be secondary. Nice to have, but there's an edit button, and there could be an edit button here allowing you, when needed, to edit, but usually the content might already be in the right form unless you're adding a new one. So I don't want to have to visit this edit form just to select. And that's also contrary to how the Wagtail page chooser works. You basically just choose, and that's it. You're done. You're already back in places. So it's more streamlined user experience. I believe that's the, so to speak, correct user experience, and editing is secondary. That's why it's called a chooser. Because typically the main use case is choosing something. So the name kind of describes the desired functionality. So there could be definitely something I'm overlooking, in the documentation. But there's no, for my, not going on too long about this, there's no obvious way to just simply choose it from the user interface. So I don't think there's like a hidden element or something that was not there due to my screen size. And that said, there's usually more ways than one to solve something. Luckily, in particular, when a ecosystem is relatively mature, although it will generally, and if you're using a mature framework, it'll generally resolve itself down to one primary solution. So the Wagtail organization has published a Wagtail generic chooser, and Matt Westcott, one of the core Wagtail developers, probably the core Wagtail developer, one of the most active ones in my experience, has published this Wagtail generic chooser. I'm going to go ahead and try that today. Hey, Subharansu, welcome. Oh, you have an exam. Okay, great. And I'll try to summarize the video towards the end. That way, if you want to just see the changes, you can skip towards the end of the video, and I usually publish the summary after the fact. So it's usually around 10, 12 minutes in length, sometimes up to 20 minutes, depending how concisely I can explain the changes. And the code you'll be able to follow in this pull request. So if you just want to see the code, go ahead and check this one out. I'm hoping to have this pull request merged today, but even when it's merged, you'll still be able to see exactly what files I changed. At the end, you don't have to necessarily go through all the commits, because I'm about to undo some of these, like removing this X-frame origin perhaps, and this widget that I'm describing. But yeah, great. Good luck on your exams. And thanks for stopping in. So yeah, let's go ahead and try switching over to this Wagtail generic chooser. And the thing is, this is the keyword here, is generic. Wagtail page chooser lets you choose a Wagtail page model, and they have also an image chooser and a document chooser, which have really good user experience. But when you have just a generic Django model, you need something else that allows you to do that. And so I can show you what we're aiming for here. So if I'll activate my virtual environment, change into the project directory. Subransu, I think it's Subransu. Anyway, project activate virtual environment. Start the server. We'll open up our browser. Yeah, basically when we go to the Wagtail admin, we have this memberships section, and if I just edit my membership, we want to have this little modal dialog pop up and let me just select something right there. But when there's no button here to select it that I can see, and I'm looking pretty closely, and it's also got this, it's a little bit janky. We don't need the hamburger menu there because it's a modal dialog. So, this is going to take me to an edit page, and then even if I don't want to edit anything, now I can select it, which is, I think, just the wrong user flow here, as mentioned previously. So we're going to go ahead and try this generic chooser. We're going to break the project a little bit for just a moment. So I'll switch this back to a field chooser panel. I'll remove this instance selector panel so we don't get any console errors. Then when I refresh this page, you can see it's just a drop-down menu. This is not ideal because we could have hundreds of users or potentially thousands of users registered here, and you don't want to sift through those, which is why the modal approach is better, because then you can actually search potentially for a user, and you can also control the query set that's displayed here as well. I believe this generic chooser lets you define a query set from your model. I'm sure it would have a method too. I'll look that up later. We'll come back to it, but yeah, because I don't want to. At this point, it's okay to have just all the people there. Might not be an issue at all. But when we start getting into some other content that I have planned for this project, then you're going to want to have access control and only allow users to select, for example, the chapters that they are belonging to or sort of managing. For example, if you create a chapter blog post and you're managing the Finland chapter, you shouldn't be able to create a blog post in the Scotland chapter or something like that, or Iceland chapter. So let's clean up the previous thing. So we got that removed, back to a field panel. Let me look in my requirements. Base settings to this. One of the things we had to add was this cross X-frame. That's gone now. That was used to render the modal, which also seems a little bit of a hack. I'm not sure what the exact need was for that, but okay. Because the Wagtail page chooser works without any kind of setting like that. And we want to remove the app instance selector. There we go. We'll visit here again. And then from our requirements text, we get the name of the package. Wagtail. I always get pip and poetry's semantics confused there. I'd like to be using poetry here, but I'm just sticking close with pip because it's in virtual, and by the similar example, they're what is the default kind of in Python. So I'm just trying to stay close to defaults here, not impose too many preferences that might make it difficult for new contributors to run the project, install the packages, dependencies, and things like that. So yeah, we'll keep it really vanilla, whatever the default flavor is for Django. All right, so we got that, and that's pretty much it. Now this should be refreshing. Here we go. So we're going to say remove Wagtail instance selector. That's essentially what we've done with all of these commits. Cool. Now the other way around. This is going to get me a little bit deeper into the internals of Wagtail as well, of knowing how it works. I don't know if they've used this project or they're just referring to. Yep, it's not relevant. Okay, cool. So let's come back here. They're just using it, the data model as a reference there. All right. Now, instead of a model, it'd be cool to specify a query set. Let's go ahead and first install. So we have a view and a widget. So essentially, yeah, you could do a ref, API endpoint which serves up JSON or something. That's interesting. I'm just seeing if it didn't mention query set earlier. So let's do this model view. So we're going to create views.py, huh? Freeze this dependency in there. That's one thing I do like about poetry is it's going to automatically and pip in. But anyway. I'll leave the models open because I think we're going to change that here, and we don't need the core. We want this memberships app, views. So don't need render, it's not going to be in use. From models import. Wait a minute. No, it's actually from user accounts. Models import user. This is something users. This is kind of frustrating. The Pylance is not able in my Django project to resolve these dependencies. I have to figure out what's misconfigured here. It's it's not a proper project. Isn't a Python. It's not anywhere in my import path here. So I think Pylance is seeing the project root, like this VS Code project, as the main. It's looking for imports there relative to that instead of the project folder. That's the root for importing. Import purposes. Sorry. Okay, so I might be able to fix that later. I guess I should be able to take an iterable. All right, so we've got a view set here. Let me just check on this view set if it lets you override. Oops. The query set. So you got an init function. Attributes. Choose view. Yep. All right. Then we're going to come over to Wagtail hooks, which we've defined earlier. We're going to Wagtail core. It's not alphabetical, but yeah. I'm wondering, this view set should actually be in the, I believe it should be in the user, the accounts model, the app, excuse me, just to keep things a little bit organized. But yeah, it's not obvious where to put this stuff. So the membership view can revert. And then we're gonna, I think this should be in the Wagtail hooks. Not for the membership. But for the accounts. There will be some coupling between these. There's a nice button there. Oops. Copy the blank line. views, import person chooser view set. It's kind of a user chooser. Should probably rename that. I mean, it's person definitely, but I don't like. It's kind of awkward to refer to persons as users. Yeah, let's just go with person. It's just also conventional. It should refer to the same thing as the same thing, and I know user is very conventional, and the model is literally called user. Could be called an account. All right, I've got to move forward. We can rename these. They use the software. The members, person chooser, user chooser. Because user has a username and password. Yeah. Anyway, and first name and last name. A person has first name and last name, so they're a little bit conflated here. Okay, so we've got this registering, an admin view set, user chooser view set, user chooser view set, user chooser. Everything is consistent, and there's no import errors, meaning I've got the right thing. Okay, so how do I use the widget now that I've registered it? Huh, you can create users there. Oh man, this is really good. Wow. Okay, I'll have to come back to this. I'll have to remember this for Western Friend. We've been having some discussion about creating things, in particular people, authors, or contacts in line, as well as being able to choose them. This might be really useful here. I like when these projects have a synergy. I hope this social network project gets a little bit of traction and just blends with the work I'm already doing with Western Friend and potentially some other ideas I've got kicking around. But anyway, if this social networking project might be, yeah, might have some longevity, that would be great. I'm out of tea, so let's try to keep this short. We're already at 20 minutes, not too bad. All right, so it's the REST framework stuff. Okay, there's a lot of good information. I'm skimming. Okay, so now we've got a widget. We're creating the widget in I guess this can go into Wagtail hooks as well. All right, let's get these imports in the desired order. I guess this was necessary. Oh, come on. Choose person is good. It's where it's going to start getting inconsistent with the code. Now, user interface texts don't have to use the exact terminology of the code. It's something they should be closer to the natural human language. Choose. I like that. Link to chosen text. Model. Equals user chooser. I guess. And I don't want to support edit right now. And we're not using snippets, so I can't just like follow that wholesale. I'm gonna have to read this much closer. But now I think we should be able to import this chooser over on the membership model. Ah, that's another thing. This might give me a clue as to where to define it when I add it to the model. Chooser mixing blue. So on your model, widgets, yeah, all right, good. Person chooser. I was hoping I could put it in widgets and not everything in Wagtail. Hooks. Wagtail hooks is getting a little bit overpopulated basically. Ooh, there it is. So we do need this. I think in both places. Actually, no, just. All right, so cleaned up the hooks a bit. Might have to come back to it. The view. widgets, import, what did I call it again? User from accounts, widgets, import user chooser. Oh yeah, well that's the same problem over there. Let's see if this is gonna work. I don't think this is gonna work. I think I'm doing something just slightly wrong. Here we go. User chooser. 2 were given. Ah, yeah, okay, I gotcha. User widget that'll help. So I was doing something slightly wrong there. That's clear. All right, refresh and another version. No way. Let's add another chapter. No way, it just worked. Let's say Sweden. Or yeah, it doesn't matter. I'll be pending. Whoa. I think it just worked. It was quite a lot of skimming. I didn't read it very closely, admittedly. I'll come back to the documentation a bit more, but yeah, there's not a lot of it, you know, skimming really fast here just to see the length of the documentation. So it's enough to get you down the road and get things up and running. It was a little bit fragmented. Admittedly, had to jump around and wasn't sure exactly how to connect the dots. So maybe an end-to-end example would be useful. But overall, yeah, I'm glad it worked. And let's go ahead and commit to these changes. Oh, okay. Yeah. Have to add it and register it. Got that. And then we created user chooser widget. And then use. Very cool. All right. I think it's a good place to do a recap. So we open up the things that we edited today. Go to view set, and I'm going to do my best to explain how these worked without really fully understanding it. I think most things I don't fully understand. So basically a view set lets you populate a query, paginate a query, and then you just need to register it so that it gets essentially gets a URL. And then define a widget. I'm wondering, let me just try something real quick. If just this widget definition. User chooser model and also the I think that's where they were wired up, so it won't work now. Just to double check. Yeah. All right. So yeah, all these steps were necessary. Shows how much I understood what I was doing. I basically do, but I didn't know if there was some magic here until I looked at this chooser modal name where we are actually, using that namespace. I wonder if I can take this off. Let's just see though how magically things are working. Everything's required. All right. That's a bit magic. Great. Let's go ahead, refresh, and do an outro. Here again is the pull request. This is a good order to describe things. I'll leave that there so it's easy to see. Welcome to the recap of today's CodeBuddies.org live code hangout. Today we continued working on the Wagtail social networking project. It's a proof of concept. We've been working on a feature for chapter membership, which means that people can join regional chapters of this social network. It's primarily geography based, but these chapters can also be hypothetically other affiliations, or affinity groups. And so essentially they're groups, but it's more formally called a chapter in an organized network. Yesterday we left off with a sort of less than stellar user experience with the Wagtail instance selector for a few reasons, but mainly that you can't really select an instance without editing it. And I don't believe that editing is the primary use case for a selector or a chooser. So, I opened an issue 15 hours ago, didn't get a response. I don't have high expectations there. But I was like, how else can I solve the problem? That's a natural question to ask. What's another way I could solve this in the short term? And turned out on further research that under the Wagtail organization, there's a Wagtail generic chooser with recent activity, 50 commits. It's not a huge package, so it's not a lot of lines of code, but the primary author is Matt Westcott, from what I can tell. So that's a good sign. It's been around for a bit, a few bumps here and there. I guess being a small package, you don't have to have concerted effort and maintenance like you would. And it's had a few other contributors. So for those reasons, I think it's kind of mainly that it's under the Wagtail organization, but in the core Wagtail developer. For those reasons, I believe it's a relatively safe bet. It's used by over, around 38 other projects, so that's good. So essentially today we just went through and swapped out the chooser, and I'll show you what that looks like. So from the chapter membership page, I can edit a membership. And I only have one user here, me, but it just lets you create a user. But I actually need to implement that. The create tab shouldn't be showing up. Let me just try something real quick. I don't want to dive straight into the code, but anyway, I'm not going to fiddle with that. This is a summary. And you basically, you select the person, the user, and it just takes you right back to in-place editing. This is exactly how the page chooser works. You just select it, and it puts you right back in the form editing, inline editing, so you can just continue with your submission there. That's it. So it should be really streamlined like that. I like the user experience. And it didn't take many lines of code. The documentation is fairly comprehensive, and it's a bit fragmented. You have to jump around or kind of know what how to connect the dots a bit, but I think all of the major dots are there with the brief, few years of experience I've got with Wagtail. I haven't gone into depths of defining widgets and how admin URLs and views sets work and things like that. This has got me slowly into that level of the Wagtail framework. Let's go ahead and dive straight to the code, and I'll try to keep this brief. So to add this to the project, it only took a few major changes. So aside from installing it, generic chooser, we added it to our requirements file. There we go, Wagtail generic chooser. Then you have to essentially define 4 pieces of code. You define what's called a view set, which is going to let you query a table or a model. So I guess it's going to return all instances with some pagination. I don't know if you can override the query set to have a subset, but in the case of the user select, I believe that all users would be fine to return. I'm also just thinking, realizing that it doesn't have a search widget. At least I didn't notice that. So that can be problematic if you've got thousands of users. Trade-offs. The previous one did have a search box. All right, so perhaps this one could be extended, allowing you to search for a user in line, like right up here, and I'll figure out how to fix the create tab. I've just got to continue moving on. And essentially, it's also not displaying these fields related to the user, which is something else I'll have to figure out. It's this would imply that on the modal dialog, I should be showing some other fields here, but it's only got a title field. I'm not sure exactly where that's coming from. So the view set just returns the data though, so I think I'm getting a little bit ahead, and obviously you can see that I'm not fully comprehending how this thing works. And then you just need to register that view set with Wagtail and give it a name, user chooser, and a URL prefix. So internally, I believe Wagtail is gonna send some data to this modal dialog, which then will be prepared and rendered as a select widget. So that brings me on to the widgets, and this could be where I would define the columns and title and what to display. Similarly, I might be able to disable the edit or get the edit or add /edit to work. This is the basic implementation. So you define a class that inherits from admin chooser, and it essentially takes a model. So I'm just using the same name for consistency. And you give it some texts, which also I didn't notice. Oh, I see. Yeah. So if this could be a day different person. If I reset. Yeah, so that would allow you to swap it out, since that's actually more appropriate text, because another would imply you can maybe have multiple selection, but this is choose a different person, makes sense. Although the text was in line with the default page chooser text, which I'm not sure how to override. That's it, but you essentially just you define your texts here. I'm using this translation utility so that we could come back and translate these. And you tell it, this is probably the key, is where to get the data from. So we've got that user chooser view set that we registered, and then the choose endpoint. And this wasn't clear. I skimmed the documentation. I didn't read it word for word, and I didn't look at the code. So admittedly, that might have been made clear in the docs, but it also could be something that is just implied through the example, which can be a little bit problematic for connecting the dots and getting a richer understanding of how things are working. So I don't know, I don't have any specific suggestions on how to improve the docs, other than maybe an end-to-end example of the most probably common use case, which I believe is adding this to a model as a widget. So the final thing is we import the user chooser into our membership model, and for our user field, which is a foreign key to the project user model, we render a field panel for that field, but then we can override the widget with this user chooser widget. So that's the key. And again, I apologize for not being able to explain this very succinctly or clearly if I've added confusion, but I think this code is a working example of how to use this project. And overall, I think it's been a good developer experience. I've noticed a couple shortcomings, like not having the search field, not having clarity on how to override or display other columns. I'm sure that it's possible. I don't know about the search field. And also disabling the creation tab, which doesn't seem to be working. So maybe there's some configuration I'm missing there, and I don't see an edit button here. But this is the user experience I was looking for, and if I could just disable this other tab, that might be sufficient to reduce kind of confusion on the end user. As a developer, I'm kind of more, I don't know, impervious or immune to some of these little UX defects, but I know that we need to polish those as an end product. So that's it. Thanks for joining. This has been a CodeBuddies.org live code hangout. If you're interested in getting involved in this project or other similar open source projects, stop on by CodeBuddies.org. CodeBuddies is also an open source project, so this CodeBuddies platform is under active development. You can contribute there. You can also participate in hangouts to live code and learn from one another. Hey Sharma, sorry if I missed your message. I'm just doing an outro. A good day to you as well. And there's also groups that allow further organizing these live stream hangouts into specific topics such as Python, CSS, Ruby, etc. So if you don't want to just join, if you're not interested in one topic like Android development, you could join the game development group and just be updated when there's new activity in that related subject. All right. Well, again, thanks for stopping by, Sharma, and hope to see you. I hope you're doing good with your Wagtail consultancy. And I'll post this, the live stream video and the summary video, so you can just watch. The summary video should be relatively short. Have a great day and stay safe out there.